Today is Thursday, January 8th, 2026. This is Quick Start from CBN News. I'm Dan Andros. A protester driving her car at an ICE agent is shot and killed. We'll have that top story and more on today's podcast, where we bring you news from a Christian perspective. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating. You can email us as well, quickstartpodcast@cbn.org. Joining me today to get through the news of the day, which we do each and every weekday morning, bright and early. CBN's Billy Hallowell and Trey Phillips. And a lot to get to on the focus story. A field goal kicker in the NFL had an excruciating season-ending miss, but his reaction has drawn some praise.
Yeah, it's cool to see this rookie Ravens kicker using this opportunity. Obviously a disappointing end to a season, but he's using it to point people to Christ. It's a cool story we'll get to here in a bit.
All right, looking forward to the details there coming up in just a moment. On the main thing, Iran's protests keep growing deadlier. They're still going on. Dozens have been killed, including some younger teens as well. Thousands arrested. The economy is really on the brink. Why this unrest could test the regime like never before. We've got details on that coming up on the main thing. All right, I want to tell you about our sponsor of this podcast, Christian Solidarity International. If you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you know that the stories of persecution, they aren't rare. They seem like they're constant, unfortunately. Believers getting arrested, churches burned, families forced to flee because of their faith in Christ. And that's why we've partnered with Christian Solidarity International, CSI. They're not just reporting on persecution, they are responding to it in real time. So when the headlines fade away and inevitably the mainstream media leaves, CSI stays. They're working in some of the most dangerous and forgotten parts of the world, helping persecuted Christians survive today and rebuild for tomorrow. They're helping displaced families, providing trauma care and spiritual support. And they stand with local churches as well when villages have been razed and things like that. There's lots of pressure there on these villages. They're there with them. And one thing that definitely stands out about CSI is that they don't treat persecution like a stat. It's not a statistic to them. They know the names. They know the villages. They know the pastors there. And they're committed to a long-term presence, not just the emergency relief, but faithful endurance. So here's our encouragement to you as part of the Quick Start family. Pray intentionally for believers facing pressure most of us can hardly imagine. Stay informed because persecution thrives in silence. And if you're able, partner with CSI as they rescue, restore, and stand alongside our brothers and sisters in Christ. How do you do that? You can learn more and get involved at csi-usa.org. That's csi-usa.org. And we're going to go to the news now in 90 seconds. Yesterday in Minneapolis, a 37-year-old woman named Renee Nicole Good was fatally shot by an ICE agent during an immigration enforcement operation in which Good was reportedly trying to block the ICE agents from doing their job. According to the Department of Homeland Security, Good attempted to then drive her vehicle toward officers who were confronting her, with one of them standing directly in front of her vehicle, prompting one to fire in self-defense. Witnesses and video footage show the aftermath with Good shot in her car in a residential area. The car then goes careening down the street and crashes into another car. Reactions are pouring in from both sides. Democratic leaders are condemning the incident. Minnesota Mayor Jacob Fry demanded that ICE, quote, get the expletive out of the city, while Governor Tim Walz called it, quote, predictable and avoidable, saying the state is, quote, at war with the federal government and preparing the National Guard. Congresswoman AOC labeled it a quote-unquote murder by an anti-civilian force. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem defended the agent, calling the death a tragedy, but emphasizing self-defense against a weaponized vehicle. And Border Czar Tom Homan blamed anti-ICE rhetoric, affirming officers' right to protect themselves. Senator Ted Cruz questioned Walz's inflammatory language. Protests have broken out, but officials urge calm as investigations continue. And if we just pull back here and look at this story, and what happened and seeing all the video that goes out there. Obviously, first and foremost, this is a tragedy. We have a senseless loss of life here. The family of Renee Nicole Good, her children that are left behind here. This is a tragedy all around, as any loss of life like this is devastating, and we need to pray for healing there. But we have to look at the facts of the case. And as you can see in the video and the reports indicate, she decided to drive towards officers who were directly going to talk to her and attempting to get her to move out of the way, allegedly. And in that split-second moment, an agent fired in self-defense when he was forced to make a decision. And so we need to let this full investigation play out before rushing to judgment. But this is a reminder of a hard truth. Disobeying law enforcement, even if you disagree with their presence or their authority or what they're doing, it puts everyone at risk, including yourself. And we've talked about this on this podcast before. It's never a good idea to disobey police officers or ICE officers or any other federal agents or National Guard or any troops. It's just foolish and dangerous, and it forces an officer who may think their life is in danger to make a response. Most officers are not out there looking for some big confrontation. They're doing a tough job and their lives are on the line. And so every day when they go out and do this. And so we shouldn't ever try to put them in a situation where they are going to have to decide. It just many times is not going to end well. And at the same time, we should demand transparency from ICE. We should see if there's any body cam footage and we should review that and see if any protocols weren't followed. But also the inflammatory rhetoric from leaders like Governor Tim Walz. This is only fanning the flames and dividing us further. And so these leaders should be urging calm and should be urging people not to do what this woman did. And whether you like their presence there or not, you should not be encouraging people to go out there and have confrontations with these ICE officers. So we'll continue to monitor this situation and report on the facts on cbnnews.com. Stay tuned to cbnnews.com for all the latest details on this tragic story. And of course, continue to keep everybody in your prayers. All right, we're going to go to the focus story now. And as we mentioned, a field goal kicker in the NFL, very, very just excruciating ending. If anybody saw the Ravens-Steelers game and the Ravens season coming to an end, actually the head coach of 18 years got fired after this game, which is crazy. But what did Tyler Loop say after this disappointing season close?
Yeah, so there's no doubt that the Ravens kicker, the rookie Ravens kicker, was discouraged and disappointed after that failed field goal at the end of Sunday's game against the Steelers, but it was encouraging to hear what he told reporters in the locker room right afterward. He opened up about his own personal devotional time and even a passage in particular that's been encouraging to him lately. He told reporters, quote, "Faith is a big part of my life, and right now I'm reading through the book of Romans." He then referenced Romans 8:28, which says, "And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose." Loop said that promise to believers has been an encouragement to him whenever he feels he's failed, ultimately knowing that regardless of whatever setback or hardship we might go through, whether it's something like a football game or something much more serious like persecution that we see believers around the world facing, he said, regardless of whatever circumstance we're facing, if you have salvation through Jesus Christ, it should be a balm, a security, and a comfort to know that all things will ultimately work together in eternity for our good.
So what do we know about his faith journey?
So Loop grew up going to church. He said he always felt he was a believer, but looking back in retrospect, you can see I was definitely a sports guy first, and I followed Jesus second. He said I kind of felt like if Jesus was just a sidekick to my life, then that would be good enough. He said in college, though, a friend showed him what it really meant to know who Jesus was. He ultimately ended up attending a Christian conference in Dallas, where he became ultimately a true believer, and he actually ended up delaying starting his NFL career, Dan, because he wanted to remain in college for an extra year. He said, I took a fifth year victory lap, hoping that I could help lead even more guys to Christ. He went to that conference, and that ultimately, ignited his faith in a serious way. And he wanted to be a part of doing that for other guys his age who were in the sports program there in Arizona. He wanted to help usher in, true spiritual revival with more guys. So he delayed starting his NFL career ultimately until now. He's 24 years old and a kicker for the Ravens, and has had a successful season despite a disappointing end this year.
Yeah, and I'd like to know what some of the other players said, because kickers have really a weird job in the NFL. You're not out there fighting in the trenches. It's a very physical and brutal game, and these guys are out there all game just grinding it out, just fighting, battling. And then the kicker comes in just from sitting on the side the whole time and often decides the game. And they're either the hero or the GOAT. And so it's a really tough job. It's not for the faint of heart. And so, it's not always easy for teammates to understand that, because they've been out there physically battling the whole game and then see a kick that he probably makes 9 out of 10 times or even more go awry. So what did some of his teammates say?
Yeah, so running back Derrick Henry, he was really encouraging to Loop. He told the rookie kicker, deal with it tonight, and tomorrow the sun rises again. He told him God put him in this position for a reason, and to trust that the Lord has a plan for his career and that the Lord is going to use him, whether he's a successful athlete or not. God is still faithful, and God is still going to use this position that Loop has found himself in. And then also, safety Alohi Gilman said, I've made my own mistakes as well over the years. You never second guess. You prepare all you can, and you let God handle the rest. So Tyler Loop will be good. He's obviously devastated right now. We just put our arms around him and we'll move on from there, is what he said. So, and also when he left the field, Dan, Loop was flanked by other teammates who had been giving him pats on the back, and they stood right behind him as he spoke to reporters. So overall, I'm sure the whole team was disappointed, but they were all very supportive of Loop, knowing that he was obviously pretty disappointed in himself at the end of that game.
Yeah. And, the grand scheme of things, people sometimes have a hard time having sympathy. Here are professional football players making millions of dollars to play football, right? But this is something you pour your life into, right? So I think money is, while you can just say, oh yeah, money is great. Like, well, if you have a disappointing day at your job, you don't just sit there and go, I'm getting paid. Like you're upset that something bad happened at your job or it didn't go the way you wanted to. You lose a client or something like that, right? These things are disappointments in our life. And yes, life will go on. They're not starving on the streets, but those are big moments, and these people are on the spotlight. And so they have a chance to show their faith in the good and the bad. And I think actually the Houston Texans are another team that seem to have a very strong Christian presence going. The coach talked about so many guys on their team being Christians. The quarterback, CJ Stroud, he said something about that. A lot of people are like, oh, really? God wanted you to win the game? We actually said that. Well, I don't think God's sitting here saying, you guys need to win and you guys are going to lose. And if you pray to me, I'm going to make you win all the games. He's like, it's not that. It's win or lose. How are we glorifying God in the midst of that? And they've been given a platform, and this is a great opportunity for that.
I love all this because I think at the end of the day, we all face disappointment. We face difficult moments. And, when you're in a sport and everybody's watching you and there's so much on your back and on your mind, you assume that the world is on your shoulders. And this is not what really matters. When he dies, nobody's going to care whether he made that kick or not. In the moment, it stinks. It's painful. But I think it really speaks to where is our value? Is our value in what we do? Is our value in people, seeing us be successful? Is it in winning a game? Those things are all great and we should aspire to them, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, we have to know whose we are and what really matters. And so I think an example like this helps us all reframe and remember when we face difficulty or struggle or disappointment that we need to turn to the Lord in the midst of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Final thoughts, Trey?
Yeah, look, I think stories like this matter a whole lot more than we might be inclined to think, because the human instinct in disappointment is to lash out in anger, right? And I think what happened here is Loop is showing, how can I be disappointed and remain godly? I think that is an example that a lot of, especially young guys, all right, you want to lash out in anger when something doesn't go your way. And this shows that things are not always going to go our way, but it's still within our control how we respond to and how we react to it. And I think that this is encouraging, right? I think that these kinds of examples matter because they set the tone for how people who watch him are going to react to anger or difficult situations in their own life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good stuff there and good food for thought for all of us as we go forward in our own walks in various areas of life and how we can glorify God in the midst of all the ups and downs. Appreciate that. And we're going to go to the main thing now. And protests in Iran have entered their 11th day amid rising deaths and mass arrests, driven in large part by economic collapse. Gordon Robertson spoke with Danny Danon on what this moment means for Iran and the region. That conversation is today's main thing.
Well, Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Danon, joins us now from New York. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me again, Gordon.
Let's talk about Iran. And we've seen protests over the years. And I thought at one point we would see a change in the government. But then they unleashed snipers on the protesters and effectively shut it down. Is this one for real? Are we really going to see a change in the government?
We definitely hope so. You know, we look at what's happening in Tehran and other cities, and we are saying directly to the people of Iran, we hear your voices, we feel your pain, we share your hope for a better future. And we know that, you know, the people of Iran, they suffer from this regime. And they are courageous, they are brave, they are paying a very painful price for their freedom. And we hope that for now, we'll see a change. But, you know, Gordon, we actually hope that something will change after the successful operation of Israel and the US against the nuclear site in Iran, that the regime will change course, will get the message. But unfortunately, it didn't happen. They continued with the will to build ballistic missiles and the desire to obtain nuclear capabilities and taking the resources from the people of Iran in order to build weapons of mass destruction. So, you know, we are watching what's happening. The US watches what's happening, but also the people of Iran, they are fed up with that.
Well, I read a report this morning that there's now a war council in Iran. And they are actively talking about launching some kind of preemptive strike against Israel. Is that intelligence accurate? Is that report accurate? What is Israel seeing Iran doing in terms of rebuilding both ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons?
We have no intention for escalation. You know, we are a peaceful nation. We have no border with Iran. We have no disputes with them. But unfortunately, we see what they are doing and their desire to build weapons that can destroy Israel. And it's not only the nuclear. It's very important to understand that, you know, I think we were very successful pushing back their nuclear capabilities. But if they will be able to build their ballistic missiles capabilities, that's a problem by itself. You know, when you have 1,000 ballistic missiles and you aim them into one location in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, it's harmful. It's even at the same damage as a nuclear bomb. So we cannot take that risk. We follow very carefully what's happening there, and we are determined not to allow them to obtain those capabilities.
In our report, we mentioned that whole cities had been taken over by the protest movement, calling for governmental change. Are you seeing that? Is that a reality on the ground?
Well, we get the reports. We see those videos of the young people, you know, taking leadership positions and speaking up against the oppression of this regime. You know, we encourage them. You know, we pray for them. But, you know, we are not the one who are actually involved in that. It's coming from the people of Iran. They are smart enough to understand what's good for them. And I think they are fed up with this regime. And it is about time that we will see a change. You know, they deserve better. You know, now it's a winter time in Tehran. They don't have heating. Think about the babies in Tehran that suffer because of this regime. They don't have formula for the babies. they suffer. And the regime takes the funds and the money and the resources in order to send it to the proxies. So they send billions of dollars to Hezbollah, to the Houthis, to radical proxies, rather than invest it in the people of Iran.
Well, let's turn our attention to Venezuela. Delcy Rodriguez, the interim president, called the U.S. military action removing Maduro a Zionist attack. Is that a surprise to Israel? It was a surprise to me. Why is she blaming Israel for this?
Well, it's easy to blame us every time. We are not involved in what's happening in Venezuela. We think the decision of President Trump was a strong decision, a brave decision. I see the UN, the silence of the Secretary General, and I think President Trump is leading the free world, and we commend him for that. But, to blame us or to think that we were behind it, it's science fiction. But you know what? Maybe it is about time to reveal the connection between Tehran and Caracas and the flights that used to go every week between Iran and Venezuela. And we know that they were smuggling weapons and they collaborated together. So I think they hope also for the people of Venezuela for a brighter future.
Yeah, I remember reading that there were direct flights between the two countries, and it just boggled my mind that there would be that kind of traffic between them. Rodriguez has been reported to be in business with some Lebanese citizens. Is that part of Hezbollah? Is that how deep Hezbollah has become in Latin America?
Well, we know that Hezbollah, they used to train in Venezuela. There is a collaboration between Hezbollah, Iran, and the Venezuela regime. So they are not innocent. Also, you have to realize that Hezbollah is getting a lot of funding from smuggling drugs. And so they have a lot in common, those bad guys. But I think we see the change. We push back Hezbollah in Lebanon. President Trump, is making changes in Venezuela. And I think the Iranians, they look around them and they realize that, their proxies are getting weaker and weaker. And that's a good sign for the beginning of 2026.
Well, there's a bad sign for the beginning. On New Year's Day, the new mayor of New York overturned some pro-Israel executive orders put in place by his predecessor. Well, what's the condition there in New York City? How is this affecting the Jewish community?
Well, we are worried. We see the language he uses, the incitement, and we saw that it was part of his campaign. But even now, after he got elected, instead of dealing with the problems of the city, he continues to spread hate against Jews. So, yeah, people are worried here in New York. But I'm sure and I hope that the federal government will make sure that everyone is safe in the city of New York, Muslim, Christians, and Jews.
Well, we join with you. We're worried here in Virginia Beach. I've never seen this level of anti-Semitism in America, and it just seems to be now a political cause. I'm seeing, particularly in the Democrat primaries, anti-Israel sentiment being openly expressed by candidates as if it's some kind of election advantage to be against Israel. I'm very concerned about it, but be assured we stand with you. We're in this for the long haul, and we join in your concern, and we'll continue to speak against it. Well, Ambassador Danon, thanks so much for joining with us and being on our show.
Thank you, Gordon.
Once again.
God bless you for everything. Thank you very much.
All right, appreciate that interview there. And that's going to leave us with time on the podcast today for one last thing.
We've got Mark 16:15, Jesus' proclamation. He says, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation." We do that through how we react and how we live, and we do it through our speech as well.
Yeah, great reminder about always keeping the main thing the main thing.
Yeah, and listen, it's a great blessing that God has given us that we are the vehicle. We're the sort of the mechanism that he chose to use to, for most cases, to spread the gospel and share the gospel through his creation, through us as image bearers of the living God. So let's go forth and do that with joy and with confidence. That's where we're going to leave it. This edition of the Quick Start Podcast. As always, get on over to cbnnews.com, faithwire.com for more news from a Christian perspective. God bless. See you back here tomorrow.